have another great crowd for our Historical Society meeting, your Historical Society meeting. I'd like to start off tonight by introducing Lee Grabowski. He's our newest member of the Board of Directors, and he's going to tell you what we've been doing over at our building over there, in case you haven't noticed. Lee?
Okay, I'd like to give a little status report of what's been done since the work started. And work started a few months ago, and a bunch of things that were donated, and I'd like to go through that list. Regrade and installation of perimeter drains, removal of the old furnace, repair of the parking lot pavement, removal of the interior basement partitions, ceiling, ducts, etc., installation of a new pump and water system, removal of the exterior and interior asbestos, trimming and removal of dead, diseased trees, and removal of brush, and we had some reinforcement put into the floor supports. Since our contractor started, Terry DeBacca, about 2-3 weeks ago, these are the things that he's done so far. He's pumped in insulation into the exterior walls. They removed the sheetrock from the small meeting room. There's a new roof that's been put over the rear additions. He's done some interior masonry work. The bathrooms, the old bathrooms have been cleared out, knocked down, that's been taken out. And a new oil tank and retaining wall have been installed. So in a couple of months that they started, there's a considerable amount of work that's been done.
Thank you, Lee. One of the things he talked about was clearing out partitions downstairs. And at our last meeting, I mentioned our hero for that job was Les Warner. And Les is here tonight. I'd like to thank him while he's in a group. And I also got some good news about one of our neighbors right across the street. They are going to have a new steeple on their church. As soon as they get some money, I think. But that's good news. One of the things that we have going for us is an oral history committee. And I was just informed that they've got about 12 of them so far. And what they're doing is going around and talking to various people in town that have been here a while and get you on tape so that 20 years from now, 50 years from now, somebody can go back and say, look what that old codger had to say. It's a pretty unique system, and as far as people I've talked to, we're way ahead of a lot of other historical societies as far as doing this. I think it's a great idea. Subjects for future meetings, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but any of you have anything that you think other people would like? Or if you're an expert in the field, even if you aren't, by the time you're through, you will be. Ask Johnny Barnett. She's giving our next one. She wanted to talk about the barns in Bethany, and she's going to be doing that on June 7th. And right now, I'd say she's probably the expert in town on the barns in Bethany. She's building up quite a lecture for us. That's June 7th coming up. Another good example of becoming an expert is our speaker tonight. He wanted to have something to do on Durrie. George McDermott, who happens to be related to, somehow or other. He'll tell us all about that. Give Mac a good hand.
Good evening. I'd like to say, start off that I'm not accustomed to talking in public, although I did take a Dale Carnegie course. I think I went back. Into the microphone. Here we go.
Put some oil on the joint.
Is there? George Durrie. He was known as the Snowman. Now I'm going to talk about one person through this talk His name was Dr. Henry Johnson. He did a lot of the genealogy and the research on George Durrie that I'm going to be talking about. Dr. Johnson was the dean of the School of Pharmacy at Storrs. He was a very brilliant organic chemist. And he retired a few years ago, and he died about 3 months ago at the age of 94. He lived up on Chapel Street in an apartment house across the street from, I guess it was the Hotel Duncan. I went to his apartment one time, and I saw on the wall a small oil painting and of it's still life, of fruit. And I said, Henry, who did that? And he said, well, that was John, that's George's brother, who was also an artist. And I said, gee, that's pretty nice. He said, well, you can have it if my nieces or nephews don't want it. Then it's yours. I saw him about a year later. I said, how about the old oil painting? He said, well, I sold it to Whitlock's for $600. I said, thanks a lot, Henry. You needed the money that badly, I would have given you the $600. So, to start with George Durrie's grandfather, he immigrated from England, and he was a Puritan. Now, a Puritan, I looked this up, a Puritan was a group within the Church of England, very strict morals and very religious. In 1781, he married Mary Steele, whose ancestors were founders of Hartford. George's mother and father came to New Haven, and they raised 6 children. They're not 6 children, they're 6 children. Bear with me, we'll get through this. John was the oldest, and George was born in 1820. They studied under Nathaniel Johnson, whose main interest was miniatures on oil and banknote engraving. From there, George, at 19 years old, became a professional, started to sell his portraits, and he took an ad out one time. Now, some of the advertising, he would barter. There was a lot of bartering going on those days. And he bartered, cost him $5 plus a painting. He got an ad in the newspaper in New Haven. I can't think of the name of that one. But one of the ads he did take out I thought was kind of interesting. Portraits taken after death if applications are made in season. I guess so. Because there were no embalming in those days, and they used to do all the funeral rites right from the house. And by the time all your relatives got there, got kind of ripe, I guess. And they used to put herbs in the coffins that helped it along. He loved to sing, and he had a great tenor voice. He used to sing in Trinity Church in St. Paul's on Sunday. He would go 3 times on Sunday to church, morning, afternoon, and evening. Very devout. He loved to listen to hymns also besides singing them. But on a Sunday, they didn't do too much. They couldn't play cards, they couldn't dance. There was no fun. They would go for long walks after dinner, after church, and they would go visiting. So if you didn't have a horse and buggy to hook up and go visiting, you went down to a local livery and you rented a horse and hack, which is, I think that came in just before ours. And everybody would go visiting. So by the time you got out to the country to visit somebody, they weren't home, they were visiting. Of course, they all dressed up in there. I'm going to hit some phrases and some words. And I don't know the derivation of a lot of them. If you do, fine, let me know. But they used to dress up in their best bib and tucker. I think the bib was probably some flouncy, lacy thing, and I don't know what the tucker was. It may have been a waistcoat or it may have been a vest, and probably tucked in there. Everybody knows what a tucker is. Look that up. He came to Bethany, and he used to paint portraits of people up here. And I think I'm falling behind here. Where's the one? I stepped on the cord. Hey. No, that's not the one. There we go. This was a sign in front of his place. We figured it was at on Chapel Street in the Phoenix building. That's good. This is a self-portrait that he did of himself. He was 19 years old. This is just before he went into being a professional painter. Now, if you wanted a painting, you would go to the studio, and he had several samples out, and you said, yeah, I'd like one of those. He'd make you one of those. There were no ways of reproducing in those days. He came up to Bethany, and he was living with the Wheeler family, and he was painting Mrs. Wheeler. And what you did in those days, you went from town to town, and you lived with the family you were painting a picture of, or else you rented a room nearby. Now, when he was at Mr. and Mrs. Wheeler's house, he went over to the Episcopal Church in Bethany, and he wanted to sing in the choir, go to church there, and he went upstairs in the choir loft, and he met Archibald Perkins, who was also called Squire Perkins, out of respect, I guess. And Squire Perkins invited him home. Squire Perkins had 4 unmarried daughters. And they weren't getting any younger. So there he met Sarah Perkins. She was a school teacher at Old Gate School. Now I have an attendance record here at the table if you want to look at it later. A lot of old names may bring back some memories of maybe some of your relatives were in that. And it took an awfully long time painting Sarah. I mean, he painted Molly Perkins, old Squire's wife. And she wrote him he traveled a lot, excuse me again. He would travel because he would use up the area as far as painting, and he'd have to travel out of town and pick up different ones. And he'd go on anywhere from a month to 6 months. And Sarah really had her hooks into this guy. She wrote him, this is an excerpt from one of her letters to him. Let them know you can associate with them without being ensnarled in their charms. Needless to say, he chased Sarah till she caught him. And they were married in the Episcopal Church in 1841. Sarah was 27. Now that's pretty long in the tooth because the girls in those days were getting married at 17 and 18 years old. Squire Perkins got her just in time. He was only 21 years old. They had 3 children, George, Boyce, Benjamin, and Mary was the youngest. They lived in various places. They lived on Elm Street, and their last place they lived was at 150 Temple Street, and it was right before the viaduct or the railroad bridge there on the right-hand side. And it was a shame that more people didn't know about George at the time, but they tore that all down in 1950 to put the Yale dorm there. And Henry Johnson asked Yale if they wouldn't put up a copper plate on the building saying that it was a former residence of George Durrie. Well, I went down there years ago, and it was there, and I went down a couple of weeks ago, and it's not there anymore. They don't even know anything about it. And that's a real shame, I think. Often he would take trips, and as I said before, they go from 1 month to sometimes 6 months. In 1846, this is an average, well, not an average, this is probably the longest trip he ever took. He left New Haven at 8 a.m. by boat, arrived in New York at 2:30 p.m. Stayed overnight, and Friday a.m. took the boat to Camden, New Jersey, and then to Philadelphia, getting there at 11:30. Took a hack to the Baltimore Depot at 1:30. Got a car pulled by 4 horses. That was a regular railroad car, I take it, and it connected 5 miles down the railroad to the train. And then he went to Baltimore, got there at 11 p.m. And then he went to Washington, got there at 3 a.m. A boat until daylight, picked up the train to Richmond at noon. Overnight, 8 o'clock a.m. to Petersburg, 9:30 a.m. Now that's a lot of traveling. But while he was at these different places, he used to go to the local churches, sing in the choirs, and he'd go to lodges, visit lodges, and go to musicals, or maybe even go acting in musicals with his voice. While he was in Virginia, he was very inquisitive. He was intrigued with laughing gas, and he loved parades, fires. He used to go to courthouses and see divorce trials, criminal trials, tobacco sheds, watching the packing and sorting of tobacco, the tobacco auctions. He went to slave auctions. He saw floggings and executions. In 1845 was a transitional period. I think I should be, let's see, where we should be here. This is the Phoenix building where, on Chapel Street, where he had his studio. Now, this is the thing. Since he was a very devout Christian, that says, maybe I can bring this in a little better. This is the Phoenix building on Chapel Street. This Phoenix building right there is, as a devout Puritan, I don't think he would like to have been there today. This says Carol Cut Rape, and I forgot what this says, but this says Peep Show for 25 cents. Oops. Well, this is just a sketch that he would go around sketching different things in the nice weather. Then in the winter, they would compose a painting, and many people thought, I read one account where they thought he was going to sit out in the snow and paint these things, and I don't think so. And they said they thought he would take these paintings back and later put in the cattle and things that were kind of stiff. Let's see this. This was a transition period where he came from portraits over to landscapes. He made only a few $100s a year, and I'd say maybe $400 or $500 a year. That's what they lived on. I guess that was considered pretty good pay. And his paintings were selling for anywhere from $5 to $40. The Episcopal Church in Bethany. This previous sketch was a blacksmith shop, and Bob figured that this sketch was later used in this oil painting. I'll flip back and forth so you can see that. It's very difficult to pick out a particular home or building in town because when an artist sketches like that, he may change anything he wants to. Put a tree in, take a tree out. Put a hill in, take a tree out. Put a hill in, take a hill out. Any way he wanted to make a good composition. The Episcopal Church painting, which was very famous, that's George as a young man. Self-portrait, by the way. This is a picture of Amity Road, I think coming from Naugatuck, Episcopal Church on the left, congregation on the right. This is the Wheeler house that he was staying at while he was painting Mrs. Wheeler and Mr. Wheeler. This is the picture of the Episcopal Church again. This is where I am now. This is the Episcopal Church. The painting was called Going to Church. This is one of 3 that are located in the White House. President Ford and Mrs. Ford used this picture for their Christmas card one year, and they used another picture of his for a previous Christmas card. These are other scenes, let's say paintings. They would be enhanced by the people that did the engravings for Currier and Ives that transferred it to the stone lithography. And so you don't get the same picture every time. I'll go back and show you that. Notice the cloud formation. There's another one. Basically, they're pretty much the same. Now, I don't know who. There, with the later I'm showing you, there's the carriage house, which is now across the street. Now, it may have been across the street, and he may have put it over here, or maybe it was here and they put it across the street. I don't know. But this is what I mean by they can compose their own painting. There's a picture that I took a couple of weeks ago of the church as it is today. Go back on that one. He was very, very good at perspective. If you notice the roof line, get that in here. This roof line in particular, see that roof line? See that roof line? He was very good at this person. In this perspective, that's better. This is a picture of the red schoolhouse. It's just called the red schoolhouse. I don't know where it is or where it was. This is George and Sarah. This was probably taken by his brother John, who started to get interested in early photography. This is Perkins Tavern. Now we're getting down to it. Perkins Tavern was built before the Revolution and burned down in 1903. And if you had a magnifying glass, which I've done, with right there it says Valentine Ale, and it has 3 rings, and it's an ale and quarter. And Mrs. Perkins was known for her donuts. Very famous. This is another view of Perkins Tavern. Another view of Perkins Tavern. And another view of Perkins Tavern. I've never been known to be this happy to get out of a tavern. Squire Perkins was quite a mover. He owned a farm, a sawmill, a tannery and leather and shoe shop, a tavern, and he controlled the toll house. One thing about George was he was very modest in his signing, often inconspicuous. He would sign on a rock or a split rail fence, and sometimes you had trouble finding, but he always signed it and he put the date down. This was called Halfway House. I don't know where it is. This is a portrait of him. Was done by Edmund Henry in Wallingford. This is the Perkins home. This is the Perkins home today as it stands. All this was going on. Currier and Ives, one of the two, visited him and bought some of his paintings and arranged to do some reproduction work of others. I don't know what the monetary outcome of that was. I don't know what they did. But in 1862, He had an auction in New York, which was by Miner in Somerville. 71 paintings were sold at the total of $1,882.50. He netted $734.13. One of the paintings was Hollingwood, which went for $100. Home for Thanksgiving went for $111. Now, Home for Thanksgiving, this is the picture of the sketch of the old Judd house. This is a barn. This is the farm scene. This is a home in... Oh, this is the family. Yes, Home for Thanksgiving. Let's see if I can bring that home better. That's about as good as we get. This is one of his most famous paintings. It was reproduced many, many times, and it was even produced in Japan on plates and produced on everything. And the sad part is, it is lost. It has never been found. This is a reproduction that somebody did. I'm going to go to the next one. You can see what they... Bob right now this was Anna Sperry did this. And this is the one he copied it from. But this was greatly enhanced. It's very, very sharp detail, which was probably done by one of the persons that was transferring his paintings to the lithograph. Very, very sharp, which he worked a little softer than this. I asked Joe Perry, who owns Perry Galleries over in Hammond, and he's an auctioneer. I said, Joe, what is the single item that brought the most money that you've ever sold? He said, he thought for a while, he said, and that was a Durrie painting. And I wasn't looking for this. He just came out with that. And I said, what did it sell for? He said, well, it was out of the old Marlin estate when Mrs. Marlin died. And they got $24,000 for it. I said, what would it be worth today? He said, $500,000. Mary Durrie was selling them to the English family, was a very rich family in New Haven. They owned a bank, and they owned C.S. Mercick and many, many things. And they were taking these paintings off Mary's hands for $25. The prints today sell for $1,000 a piece. He died in 1863 at the age of 43 years. He left an estate of $7,358. When he died, Mary was 11, and George was 22. This is not his most famous painting, but this was they say his finest painting, called Hunter in Winterwood. Very detailed, so forth. And somebody said, well, it looks like the Hudson River School because of all the hills in the background. But George didn't like to be compared with the Hudson Valley School. He had his own unique style. He was very proud of that. This picture of West Rock that he did. He did several of these. We did East Rock. This is a picture of George, self-portrait, that he had started. But either his son, George Boyce, or his brother John finished it. I don't think we can see. He did the face, but the background was very sketchy, very rough, and you can see the brush marks on the coat. And through here, and the background was very sketchy. This is his tombstone in Grove Street Cemetery. And Mary Durrie's name was also on this. She died in 1941 at the age of 89. She was a school teacher, and she taught at Eton School. And she retired and moved to Branford. His son George Boyce had enlisted in the 1st Company 102nd Infantry Regiment in the New Haven Grays. He was captured at Chancellorsville and spent the remainder of the war in living prison. He was an artist like his father and his uncle, but he was also a doctor, and when he came back from the war, he decided to be a doctor. I think he made a wise choice. I think doctors made him more than artists. He and John, his uncle, and George's brother, finished 63 unfinished paintings. And as I mentioned before, Henry Johnson was a boy, and his great-grandfather was also George, or Archibald Perkins. And Mary, he told me one time that Aunt Mary hired a hack and took Henry and herself out to visit the Perkinses at the home, or the tavern. And he said, Amity Road was horrible, and it was all ruts and sand, very bad. And halfway up the hill, or maybe at the top of the hill, they would have a level place over at the side, and sometimes there was a spring where the horse could get a drink. And they used to call these thank you ma'ams, whereas today they call them, what do they call them? Well, now, as you're growing up, you hear these different things, and you try to put them all together, and a lot of them don't make sense until later on you can start putting them together. And the families used to get together on, as many families did, on Thanksgiving and Christmas. And they used to sit at the big table, and the kids were at some table in some other room at a card table. And you could hear them laughing and talking in the other room, and you woke up and wondered, what's going on in there? But through attrition, you finally moved up, and you got to the big table. And when you got to the big table, there were rules that you had to obey. I'm sure some of you had to go through this. Children were seen and not heard. You didn't slouch, you sat up straight. Kept your napkin in your lap. No elbows on the table. Your left hand in your lap. Your knife turned in. Cut your food up in smaller pieces. Chew it a little longer. Don't play with your food. Don't wash it down with milk. Ask things be passed. Ask to be excused. And if you got to a meal without having a nervous breakdown, you were lucky. So at the table, after I got in there, I sat there, and they would say, oh gee, what would you like? I bet you'd like the drumstick. The drumstick? The drumstick was a turkey leg. Who wanted a turkey leg? But to make it look a little better, they called it a drumstick. Yeah, sure, I got it. I'd rather have a little white meat there. And there used to be an old man, Dr. Tillman's, who they also invited once in a while, my grandfather's friend. He said, what would you like, Doc? And Doc would say, I'll take the part that went over the fence lines. Everybody would give a little bit. I said to myself, the drumstick beats that part. But if you were good, you might even get the other drumstick. And you learned about, they talked about Ned, Uncle Ned, but it was just Ned, it wasn't Uncle Ned. But Ned was a scallywag. Now there's a word I don't know. I looked it up, I can't find it. If somebody knows, let me know. He was a scallywag as a boy, as a man, and as a boy he was a whippersnapper. I don't know what a whipper was, but if I did, I don't think I'd snap at him. But he drank, and he smoked, and he was a womanizer. It's my kind of guy. Now, besides Ned, there was Aunt Mildred, Aunt Belle, and Josephine. Aunt Belle went to Maine. She married some guy who went up to Maine. Mildred and Josephine went on to another piece of history here. Hold on. Seems one of Abner's, Archibald Abner's Perkins' daughters married a fellow. His name was Edwards, George Edwards, and they had a son whose name was George Edwards. And his father died at age 26, leaving her with their son. So she met a fellow named Manville, who had all these other children. He was a widower, had Ned, and he had Mildred, and he had Belle, and he had Josephine. And it was always thrown up to me, if you don't behave yourself and change your ways, young man, you know, Uncle Ned burned the candle at both ends, and you know how he ended up. I figured, yeah, he's dead. That's the way I'm going to go sometime, too. No other way of getting around it. But Manville owned a carriage factory at Worcester and Wallace. At that time in New Haven, there were 36 carriage manufacturers, 1 carriage gear manufacturer, 8 carriage hardware manufacturers, 1 carriage ironworks manufacturer, 7 carriage body manufacturers, 1 carriage pole manufacturer, 3 carriage string manufacturers, 2 carriage woodwork manufacturers, 2 axle manufacturers, 1 carriage steps manufacturers, 4 carriage lace trim manufacturers. C. Coles was the only one that could make the transition and to automobiles. They made brass lamps, and they're still in operation today. They're still in the automotive business, but they don't do that anymore. A few men came in with the horseless carriage, and they tried to promote it in New Haven, and nobody wanted to pick it up. So New Haven and the East Coast lost a great industry which went out to the Midwest, known as Detroit. Now, in researching some of this, Bob and I went to the Grove Street Cemetery, which is a very interesting cemetery. If you never have anything to do, anything better to do on a Sunday, go down there and look around. You can get a pamphlet that gives directions, and very, very famous people are buried there. It's very peaceful there. Noah Webster's buried there. You know, he's known for the dictionary. There are 2 signers of the Declaration of Independence. Eli Whitney Blake. He invented the stone crusher and the corkscrew. Whoever thought of the corkscrew being invented, I just thought it evolved. Eli Whitney, he invented the cotton gin, of course, you know that. Plus, he had the armory, which just below the falls, which has been reconstructed at Armory Street in Whitney Avenue. And he was given a chance to bid on a government contract for arms. Colt was bidding, Remington was bidding, Winchester was bidding, and Eli Whitney. They had to produce so many arms within a certain period of time. And I guess maybe you had to put a bond on it. I don't know. But Whitney, everybody else said, we can't do it. Whitney said, I'll do it. So he did. He invented interchangeable parts. In those days, every product that was made, every part within that product was made for that specific product. He came away with the idea of manufacturing one piece that would go into another piece that were similar, interchangeable parts. He made the deadline. He shipped the guns, and he shipped them in parts. They were not put together, but he beat the deadline, and they got their guns. Of course, there's General David Humphreys. He introduced merino wool, the Valley mills there. Merino wool is a very, very fine fibered wool. He was also aide-de-camp to Washington. Now that's when I knew. Because when Washington was there, he was his aide in Decatur. I'm sorry. And Roger Sherman was also there. He was one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence and 4 other documents. And of course, we know him because he owned a movie theater in town, the Roger Sherman. Then there was Charles Goodyear. We know Charles Goodyear for the Goodyear Blip, of course. I went one time up to the Prospect Cemetery, looking up an ancestor. I went to Oliver's and I asked the girl at the check-in counter, "Where's the oldest cemetery in town?" She said, "We only have one." Okay, I went there and I thought, what a backward town this is. Bethany has 6. Maybe they're healthier than we are, I don't know. We also have more fire engines. I think I would have liked to know George. I think he was a very sincere, very honest person. And he was very sort of a quaint person. I have some excerpts from his diary I'd like to read to you. I don't know what year these were, but I know the day. January 21st. This evening, the moon shone out beautifully on the new fallen snow. The trees sparkling with icy lemons made the scene almost enchanting. Then he had to finish up by saying, "Nothing vintage today." January 22nd was the next day. Well, let me preface this next one. In those days, of course, they didn't have snowplows like we do. So what they did, they had huge drums, that were probably 6 feet in diameter, and they were pulled by horses, which packed the snow down so you could go sleighing. January 22nd. Today, the weather has been beautiful and the sleighs have been constantly on the move, making the scene animated. January 23rd. Beautiful day. Mother spent the day with us. Father took tea with us. This afternoon I got a sleigh, 1 horse, and took Mother, Sarah, George, and Austin to ride. We're gone a little over an hour. Had Mr. Barrow's horse and sleigh. Paid $1 an hour. And that's when the guy was only making a few $100 a year. And he was getting $4 or $5 for a penny. So I'd like to finish up with something he said when he was 26 years old. "I am this day 26 years old. I realize now how rapidly time passes away. Oh, may I improve the time as it flies and increase in all good works, so that when my short race is run, I may not have lived in vain." He made city men homesick for the sound of sleigh bells on a frosty morning in New England. Thank you.
A couple other things that I'd like to cover. Lee, who spoke to us earlier, has volunteered to be our membership chairman, which is quite a job. But hopefully get all of you updated and everything else every year, and you'll know where you stand. Right now, I'd like to call on Bob Britton. He's got a special project here. Clear that up.
Well, I don't know if it's a project. First, I want to thank Mr. McDermott for a wonderful job. I've got one final question for you.
Oh, yeah, questions.
Well, I have one.
Okay.
What is your relationship to Sarah Durrie's father, Archibald Abner Perkins?
You want the greats? He's my great-great-great-grandfather. He was my grandfather's grandfather.
That'll do. Two items I'd like to mention to you tonight. One is I've been kind of serving as a program chairman, and I think we've done pretty well, not because of my efforts so much as the fine people who put out time and effort and money to prepare these talks for you and to bring to life some of Bethany's history. And they've all done a fine job. I just don't know how to thank them. The next one, as you know, is going to be June 7th, this coming June 7th, and that's going to be Johnny Barnett. And she's going to be talking about the Barns of Bethany. Don't miss it. She's taking winter scenes and fall scenes and spring scenes, and I'm looking forward to that a lot. From the Brinton point of view, I could use some help from you folks. If you have some suggestions about other topics, preferably if you have an idea of someone who will present one of these, or even better, if you yourself are willing to do it, please talk to me. We'll work together. As Mac will tell you, I will work with you, maybe nag you a little bit, or, well, I wouldn't say nag, would you? Good. He's polite.
Very good.
But, you know, I think this is very important for the citizens of the community to get involved in the history of the community, and this is the way to do it. I've got a number of ideas, but I want to hear your ideas, and I'd sure like to hear from you folks. One other item before I leave you, and we're getting close to refreshment time. We have a few early postcards left over that were donated by Kate Betts and Dale Disher. A number of months ago, we have sold some of them. These are Samuel Chamberlain postcards. We have two of them. One of them is the Holy House doorway. You didn't see exactly this one in the show. You saw a picture of the Holy House where George Durrie stayed for a while, evidently. Then there's one of the Episcopal Church and the Rectory. This one did appear tonight, and these were done in 1935 as part of the tercentenary celebration, and so they're 60 years old. They're antiques. They're $5 a piece, and they're going fast. And when they're gone, they're gone. So if you're interested, see me tonight. I don't think we're going to have any more of the church left. We have a few more of the doorway. Anyway, come and see me. I will have them. Thank you.
By the way, when somebody comes to visit and you tell them about this show and they say, gee, I would have liked to have seen that one, just go to our library. Willie Britton is recording all these, and you can pick them up and check them out in the library. Any one of the ones that we've done up to date. Your organization's work. Right now, I'd like to introduce our secret weapon. Kathy Grabowski probably sent all of you a note. You wondered, who is Kathy Grabowski? We're going to give you that pleasure right now. Kathy?
I'm Kathy Grabowski, and I am the co-chairperson of the fundraising committee. My husband and I are doing it. We have two activities that are going on right now that we want you to know about. We have a dinner coming up on February 23rd. We have tickets available tonight if you haven't gotten them already. The price is $8 for adults and $4 for children. Advanced tickets only because we need to make a commitment to the vendor. The other thing that we have going on is in town we have someone who has very generously committed to matching funds for the renovation of the main meeting room of the Old Town Hall. We needed $5,000 to make a commitment to Carpentry by Terry to renovate the main meeting room to the original 1914 appearance. And to date, we have raised, as of tonight, $1,639 out of the $2,500 that we need to complete that task, which means that we need to raise $861 more. And the urgency here is that we need to make a commitment to Terry very shortly, because if we don't raise the money now, the project could be done at a later date, but it would be a lot more expensive to do it, and it would require demolition at a later date. So what I'm asking you to do is to think about it and consider making a contribution to the fundraising committee. I think most of you have seen the flyers that have gone out, and if you're interested in making a donation, you can get a hold of me at home, or anybody on the committee will take the money gladly from you. I need to let this donor know what's going on, so that the donor can give us the check. Are there any questions? I really like Bethany. I'm new to Bethany. I've only been here. I've been here 2 years in May, and I am really touched by this community. It's a real nice place.
The Grabowskis came around and volunteered to help out before they even built their house. To give you an idea of how much they like Bethany. One thing we'd like to push is dinner, and tickets are available outside. Food is available in the back, and hope to see you all on June 7th. Thank you very much.